This covers 70 years of my life. This family I went to when I was 15, and this one I went to in London. Then I went out to Egypt with this family, and this family I went out to South America. And these are children that I've looked after. I loved them all, and they all loved me, and I think that was the most important part of my work. What keeps a nanny going is all the remembrances of all their children. This is the box with the letters from my children. I have dozens and dozens of them. This is what I lived for. There's Darling Nanny, I went out to tea yesterday. I had a lovely time, and at the bottom of the letter it says, P.S. When are you coming home? Lots of loves and lots of kisses. That is my most precious possession.
During the first half of the century, 1 in 10 of all children were brought up or cared for by someone other than their natural parents. Foster mothers, house mothers, step-parents, and especially for the middle and upper classes, nannies. The stresses and strains and the joys experienced by substitute parents and the children they looked after have rarely been documented. Charlotte Huggett was one of 250,000 nannies working in the 1920s. Like many, she dedicated her life to other people's children.
I feel that the love I had for the children, I couldn't have had if I'd had a child of my own. You couldn't have loved them any more, because every sort of thing that you did for the children, night and day, you were responsible. And the children always slept with their nannies, and so saw you the last thing they went at night, and they always saw you the first thing in the morning. And if they called in the night, it was always Nanny that was there.
Nanny, or nurse, as she was sometimes called, was responsible for the care of the child from babyhood until it left home to go to boarding school at around the age of 8. It was often an intimate and very loving relationship.
The children got attached to Nanny and were quite strangers to their mothers, because the mother would come up into the nursery in the morning and just see them, and then the children never, quite often didn't see them until the end of the day, when they went down to see their mother in the drawing room.
Rose Luttrell had a household of 6 servants, including a nanny. She became a mother in 1918.
In those days, mothers never looked after their own babies, and it used to be brought down after tea, and I used to go and watch Nanny put him to bed. And I had access to the nursery whenever I wanted. I used to go in and out of the nursery, but you didn't do anything actually with the baby. Nanny did everything. If they were in any trouble, if they fell down, oh, I want to go to Nanny, I want to go to Nanny, they could always go back to Nanny in the nursery. Whatever happened, there was Nanny in the nursery. They had that wonderful feeling of security. There was always Nanny there to give them a welcome. One knew then that Nanny was kind to them, because some people had trouble with their nannies being unkind to the children. And that was an awful worry. If you had a nanny that didn't get on with the children, one was worried to death.
Mostly you took them out, because parents always liked their children to be out. So they were in prams, and you took them out and tried to make the walk as interesting as possible. When you're walking all the morning and walking all the afternoon, you really got very, very tired. I've known myself to go to sleep in the bath, fall asleep in the bath through tiredness.
I think she had a holiday once a year, but she went away very, very little. She never had a day off. She used to have a Sunday afternoon. I used to let her go off. She used to go to chapel, and I used to put the children to bed on Sunday evening. She showed me how to do it, and I did it under her instructions. But otherwise, never did anything for the children. Well, you don't want to pay somebody to do something, do the job, and then do it yourself, do you?
You never thought of it as being a job that you were being paid for. You never thought of it in that way. But the very first time that I had to leave my children, I was so ill that I had to go back again to see them, to make quite sure they were happy and well. And I could see that they still loved me, but I could see that I'd got to go on. I've always kept in contact with the children, and there are little pathetic letters that came. When are you coming back? They never seemed to forget that one nanny. But the love of the children, I think, was a great reward. And now I feel reaping that reward with them, children growing up and having families and coming to see me. That, I feel, is a great reward for all the work that you've done for them.
While the middle and upper classes chose to have their children looked after by others, at the other end of the social scale, children were sometimes taken away from parents.
Poverty, bad housing perhaps. But whatever the cause, home has been destroyed. And so, a very difficult decision. Sometimes it may be better to take the children away to an institution.
During the 1920s and 30s, social welfare workers removed 3,000 children each year from homes where the parents were destitute or considered unfit to look after them. Many would be placed in so-called scattered homes, new small-scale institutions accommodating around 30 children, run by house mothers. Violet Hudspeth was brought up in Leamington Spa in the 1920s, one of 6 children. Her mother, an impoverished single parent, was prosecuted and imprisoned for stealing food for the family, and the children were taken into the care of the local authority.
I was sent to this home in Charlotte Street. My brother went to a home in Warwick. My other brother went to another home in Warwick. And my sister went to what you call like a nursery school. And my eldest sister, she would be 14, I don't know what became of her. She must have gone to a youth place, for older people.
Violet was sent to a scattered home where she was put in the care of the house mother.
When I got there, I remember this mother, she wore glasses, she was tall, but she looked tall to me. And she said, "You know where you are, don't you?" And I said, "No." 7-year-old answering I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're going to live here." And she says, "You're never going to see your mother or parents again." And I think I must have looked at her, it would be a natural thing, and I started to cry. And I did cry for 2 or 3 days. I was just heartbroken, I don't think I realised till I got to the home that they weren't with me. If you can, I just realised I was on my own there, and that probably brought on, crying for my mother and my brother and everybody else, But shocking, really. The house mother said to me, "You will call me mother. I'm called mother." And I have a faint recollection of just staring at her for a bit, and I didn't say it for quite some time. It really took a lot of saying to call her mother. I remember this one day, I don't know if I smiled, I don't know if I smiled or what I did, but I must have done something. But I probably was resentful to this mother, perhaps I was a little bit to blame myself. I don't know, I don't think so. And that was the first experience I had of being beaten. And I can remember we were in the basement. The basement was where all the cooking was done and washing up, and there used to be a little cubbyhole, and she'd take you in there, and she'd pull your dress or whatever you'd got on at the time, pinafore, and she would beat you across your back, really, really hard, And I remember going to school, and we used to have to get undressed for gym, and the teachers saw it. She happened to saw it. Well, I think one of the girls saw it first. Said to the teacher, "Oh, she's got all marks on her back." And I remember her fetching the headmistress in, this white-haired lady. I can remember her as well. And she said, "Have you seen this girl's back?"
And she said, oh, well, she says, she's out of the children's hands, nothing we can do about it. She said, just leave it. But I had to accept it. I did have to accept it, like, you know. It was something you'd never experienced before. I say we'd had a hard life with my mother, but we'd had the love of her, like, you know, and all my brothers and sisters, but then suddenly to have all that suddenly wiped away from you. Yeah. But anyway, you get over it. I did get over it.
The introduction of house mothers into children's homes and orphanages was an attempt to improve childcare in institutions. But the low standards of the unskilled and poorly paid staff did little to improve the reputation they had for the harsh treatment of children. Orphanages, which still housed 30,000 in the 1920s, had the most fearful reputation. Poor families in which the parents died frequently did all they could to avoid the children being taken into care. If a mother died, it often fell to the eldest sister to hold the family together. The Organ sisters grew up in Bristol in the 1920s. At the age of 14, Kate took over the role of mother to her younger sisters.
My mum was always very ill, and therefore I had to stay home and do all I could for her. And then she was taken to Southmead Hospital, very seriously ill. She was in there a few months, and then she died. And then from then on, I just took over. I wanted the family to stay together, and I'd do anything I could to keep them together. I just hated the thoughts of any of them being put in a convent or an orphanage. And I just thought it was my duty to look after them. So the nun said, well, give it a month's trial and see how you get on. But in the meantime, they still kept an eye on us, mind. You know, that they'd come and visit us to see that we were all right. Anyway, we got over that month, then the next month, then the next month. And we just carried on. They never ever come to see us.
I can remember every Friday night having a bath in the tin bath in front of the fire, and we'd take it in turns. Eileen first, me next, and then Doris. And she'd scrub our hair and put vinegar on our hair so that we never had fleas. And
Nits, they called it.
Yeah,
nits.
That's right.
Nits.
And then after that we had to have a castorette, you know, for bowels.
Horrible.
And she made sure we swallowed it there and then. We couldn't broke the back and chuck it away.
No.
We had to swallow it in front of her. Now that's mostly I can remember that.
I can remember when she came home from work, after she'd had her dinner, or we'd all had our dinner, and the washing that was done, she would get all the washing, the dirty clothes, get the tin bath out again, because we have no washing machines there. It was in the tin bath, boil up the kettles again. She should do all the washing, put it on a guard round the fire to dry off, and then in the morning if it was dry, she should even iron it so we could have a clean dress and socks and that for school. Every night that was.
She was always there for us, you know, and you don't sort of... I mean, now we do. We think a lot of her now because we know we're all that much older what she done. She was always there, look.
I still bosses them about, and they still do what I tell them. As old as they are, they're still frightened. They are really. They're still frightened. Better ask our king. That's true.
The close bonds between the Organ sisters remain, and Kate is still seen as a substitute mother by her younger sisters.
On her, Sharon, Sharon, wouldn't that be the nylon you are wearing? Lord help the mister who comes between me and my sister, and Lord help the sister that comes between me and my man.
On a lovely summer day, one of our welfare officers brings these twin brothers to their new home in an Oxfordshire village. According to our principle of careful preparation,
Most of our children first get to know their future foster parents by visiting or spending holidays with them, before boarding out is finally arranged. The boys' excitement at going to a little home of their own is quite obvious. What a thrill for them now, having a room of their very own. How exciting, too, for the foster parents. A homely, humble tale. And this village shoemaker...
Foster mothers received a weekly payment from the local authorities for each child they took on. It was a policy which unfortunately encouraged some women to be substitute parents for purely mercenary reasons. David Barron had been in an orphanage in Leeds until he was 3. Then he was put in the care of a foster mother.
My foster mother put me up in the attic. I didn't have a bed. Just simply sleep on the floor on an old sheet. That was it. But the unfortunate part was, if I wanted to go to the toilet, I didn't. I wasn't allowed out. Once I was up there, I wasn't allowed to go downstairs at all. So, of course, in the attic, there was sort of a manhole. When I found that nature called, I was desperate. I used to use that. I got beaten up for that, and I was made to stand in a corner, hour upon hour. And if I as much as looked round, I got a fist in my mouth. I got the lot. The wooden spoon that she used was absolutely enormous. It was massive. For instance, there's no, if you put your hand out, you drew your hand back in, she could still reach you, which she did. I would hold my hand out when she told me to hold her hand out, and she's bringing it down. I knew I was getting, so I'd draw it back in. So then, same applied to my right hand, would draw that in, so of course I got the wooden spoon. She didn't miss. I got it round the head, round the neck, round the face, anywhere. All the beatings my foster mother gave me, I can't ever remember crying. I think the factor was that I'd had a combination of the beatings and being starved, and a combination of the two that I just think I couldn't cry.
After 6 years, it came to the attention of council officials that David was being severely neglected, and he was taken away from his foster mother.
These 2 men came up to me and said, "David, we're taking you to a lovely home. Nice big home." It was. And I was so excited. I kept saying, "Will they be having cinema shows?" "Oh yes, I was really excited. I was then taken down to Ward 1. This attendant took me down. I had this big massive chain. Pull this out. After trying a few keys, you unlock the door. I went in. He locked the door behind me. He then said, "Come on." He took me through in 2 other doors, locked them. Then he got to the bathroom, he unlocked that, and I was given a bath. I think he must have thought I couldn't bath myself because he was bathing me. And then I said, "Right, come with me, sonny. This'll be your room. Take your clothes off." I did. Fold them up. I did just that. Put this nightshirt on. I did just that. "Now," he said, "David, you will do this. You've done it tonight, and you'll do this every night. And if you don't, you'll get a damn good beating. Remember?" And at that point, he said, "In there you go." In I went, pushed me in, and then he slammed the door. And that door sounded very heavy to me. I tried to look out the window at the bars up. You couldn't get your nose through, let alone your head. And I just thought, then it really hit me like a bomb. Why? What have I done to deserve all this? Why? I mean, in my little mind, I was just reeling it off in my mind. Why had I had to come out of an orphanage home? That was the only love that had been shown to me. Why should I have had to go through all what I did with that foster mother? Now, to be thrown into an institution, but to be thrown into this room, locked in and threatened with a beating and bars up at the window.
David had actually been put in a mental hospital. Under the Mental Deficiency Act of 1913, anyone in local authority care who was considered a problem could be classified as feeble-minded, removed from their substitute parents, and placed in a mental hospital for an indefinite period.
I'm not feeble-minded, and I don't think I never have been. No, I think it's just a load of rubbish. The reason for being as I was, and maybe a bit unruly, was because I wanted to be doing things that any normal child would maybe have been doing around that time. But unfortunately, I did like all the others had to do, and that was as I was told.
David was to remain in Wixley Mental Hospital for the next 25 years and was not discharged until 1959, when he was 34. Most children with mental and physical disabilities were placed in residential institutions for long periods. The first half of the century was the heyday of such institutions. It was common practice for disabled children to be taken away from their homes and brought up in these places. Sheer numbers and the authoritarian attitudes of the staff made any individual care very rare. Catherine Keating, a care worker at the Chailey Heritage Home for Crippled Children in Kent, tried to adopt a more sensitive approach.
I used to do the best I could for them, and I think they all appreciated the affection and the love and that you could give them. The children all started to call me Mum, and I thought that was a marvellous thing. You know, it made me feel very, very good and very much wanted. And I looked on them as my children and tried to do the best I could for them. Used to listen to their little problems and help them with their disabilities as much as I could.
Marjorie Jacks was sent to Chailey in 1923 after contracting polio as a small child.
I was only 3.5, and I suppose I was a sweet little thing to them, and they used to make an awful lot of fuss of me. And they really loved me, the nurses then. But then, like everything else, nurses change, and I got older. And when I became older and got to the age of about 5, they didn't... Yeah, I was put into a dormitory, and I just, you know, I think that I was starved of love at that time.
It's frightfully difficult when you have a large number of children to try and show affection to all of them, but the affection was there. You had to be a bit grim sometimes, you know, and tell them off. Very often I used to think that the discipline was very strict. And the meals were always taken in silence, and then perhaps at the end of their first course running, then they were allowed to talk, and then silence again, and until the end of the meal. And then all the crocks and the cutlery and that used to be passed up to the end of the table, all done in a very methodical manner.
The head girl would stand up and shout, "Silence, please, girls." And then she'd say 1, and you put your hand on your knife. 2, you picked it up. 3, you passed it along. 1, again, on the fork. 2, you picked it up. 3, you passed it along. Then she'd call 1, and you put your hand on your spoon, and you picked it up, and you passed it along, until everything was cleared off the table. Every item was done 1, 2, 3.
For birthdays, the children used to have some marvellous parties, and there was always a cake for them, either supplied by the parent, or if the parents didn't supply it, the Heritage would supply it, Chailey would supply it. And they always had a party. There was never a birthday was ever forgotten.
I was always at Chailey Heritage for my birthdays. So Mum used to bake me a lovely cake because she was a cook. And she used to bake me a lovely cake and ice it and send the candles and everything with it. And this particular year, it was confiscated because I'd been naughty or done something wrong. And they put it in the tuck cupboard. And I wasn't allowed it till a couple of days later. And when they did bring it out, it was full of ants. So I couldn't eat it, and neither could any of my friends. So it was absolutely wasted and had to be thrown away.
In this atmosphere, any show of affection by the staff was seized upon by the children, and close relationships sometimes developed.
When some of them left for good, there was tears very often on both sides. You used to feel, you know, the tears pricking your eyes when they used to come to say goodbye to you if they were leaving. And that was, you know, how I used to feel towards the children. I used to have that affection for them. And I think they had that affection for me as well.
One of the most difficult experiences for a child was the death of a natural parent and the arrival of a stepmother or stepfather into the family. Low life expectancy rates made this a common experience. In 1939, Lily Felsted's husband died at the age of 38, leaving her with 4 young children to bring up. Lily remarried a year later.
My sister-in-law said I was a lucky woman that any man would take on 4 kids, a woman with 4 kids. I said yes, but circumstances were different in his case. He hadn't got a home. He wasn't taking me to his home.
There were soon problems between the children and their new stepfather.
I think he did resent the children. Had he had mother on her own, yes, that would have been ideal for him. As I say, he was a bachelor who wanted a home, but no responsibilities.
And then I found that he really was jealous of the kids. Get this done, get that done, get the other done. The fowl wanted feeding. So many things had to be done.
He was right. All the way along the line, he was always right. So you were never allowed an opinion or a voice of your own. You were told to shut up and that was it. Even at the table you weren't allowed to speak. If you opened your mouth to say anything, you were told to, well, you banged this fork on the table and that was it. You knew you didn't open your mouth again.
That first 12 months, I caught him with a belt in his hand. And then, as I say, I found my youngest girl bruised. And it was all because she had opened a money box.
Some children who lived near to us made my sister get her money box and empty it, not for us, for them. And he thrashed her so badly that she was bruised from her waist to the backs of her legs. Now, my mother didn't know this, she was at work.
But the following day, when I come to bath her, and I saw all the bruises on her, I know why women kill men, because I could have killed him right then and there. I couldn't wait for him to come home from work. And I said, if ever you lay your hands on my children again, as God's my judge, I'll kill you. And I meant it.
And I didn't love him. No, I didn't. That's an awful thing to say, but it's true. He didn't love us. He didn't, I mean, to me, he took the place of my father, supposedly, when he married my mother. But he never took on that responsibility.
Divorce, leading to second marriage and step-parents, was very rare in the early part of the century. But during the First World War, the long separation of wives from husbands away fighting at the front led to an increase in the number of divorce cases.
My father joined up in 1914 and was taken prisoner in 1916. My mother received a telegram which said my father was missing, believed killed. She really thought father was dead. Now she heard no more of him for over 2 years, and she took up with another man. Another telegram came in 1918 to say that father had been released and was on his way home. Mother, being 8 months pregnant, felt she couldn't face him, and she fled with her lover. We said goodbye, and tears were all over the place, and she said, I'll come back for you. Father came home very shocked and very angry, and within a week I had applied for custody of the children and a divorce, which he succeeded in getting.
Mary's mother was denied access to the children, as divorce law was heavily weighted against women. Her father quickly remarried.
They brought this very pretty lady, and he said, this is your new mother. And I said, that's not my mother. Where is my mother? Where is she? She said she would come for us. This is your new mother. Go up and call her mother. And I stamped my foot. I was so disappointed. I got angry, stamped my foot, and I said, no. He said, oh, call her mother. Twice he repeated it, and each time I said, no, and he slapped me very hard across the face.
The family moved to Rothsay, a popular seaside resort off the west coast of Scotland.
We were so excited. There was plenty of people, plenty of children. The seagulls were screeching. There was so much noise. We were full of high hopes that everything would be as it was, except that Mother wasn't there, which left a bit of a shadow. However, we thought maybe the pretty lady would be all right to live with.
They moved into a seafront home with their stepmother, Beatrice.
On Sunday afternoons, we'd walk along the prom with the mother and father. We'd see all the children enjoying themselves, and we wondered why we couldn't go and play too, but we had to follow strictly behind Beatrice, not to go on the beach. And we'd see, it was a wonderful place. It was full of fun, merry-go-rounds and music, flags flying, and children playing with buckets and spades and paddling in the water. And we walked all that 2 miles every Sunday and back again watching. That was all we saw of the beach. Mother would not allow us onto the beach. And she made that very plain and told us what our punishments would be if we disobeyed her. She was always slapping us for the least thing. If we weren't quick enough, or if we didn't fetch something quick enough for her, it always ended up with us slapping. But the worst bit was when she took either Father's belt or the stair rod to us. That was very painful. She never left a mark where it was visible. She seemed to always hit us across the shoulders, the buttocks or the legs, but never where Father could see it. And she made out to Father that she was a wonderful mother to us. But all the time, even all the time, it wasn't just an occasional misdemeanour that caused it, it was all the time. She really hated us. In fact, I think she wanted to make us so miserable that Father would send us away back to Granny or home. She said it to him often, I wish you'd get these brats out of my life.
Parents who wanted to adopt often chose their future child from a home. But prior to 1926, there was no adoption law, and interested parties came to whatever arrangement suited them. Children from poor families were often seen as an asset by their parents. Vera Butterworth was born in Bury in 1923. She and her family tramped the streets begging for money and food.
I was looking after my little brother Frankie, you know, and he would be hungry as I was. And we'd look through this window and see these kids, and then this lovely face of Mrs. Hodgkinson had peered through. And maybe she felt sorry for us, but she was like an angel looking at you, and then she'd call you in the shop and give you something.
Mr. and Mrs. Hodgkinson came to an arrangement with Vera's parents and gave her a home.
Well, it was like heaven where I were, you know. And nobody wants to go back to that, no home or anything. No bed, no clothes, no nothing, and begging up and down for food, and this were all laid on for everything, you know. We're all laid on there, lovely meals, lovely bed, lovely clothes, nice school, nice people to live with. Yeah, it was a big difference.
But soon Vera's parents began writing threatening letters, demanding money or the return of their daughter Rachel, as she was then called.
Dear Mr. or Mrs. Hodgkinson, how is our Rachel going on? Is she not bothering about us? And if she's all right, we want to know if you will settle up with us. As you know, Mr. Hodgkinson, we have nothing, and we would not like to fetch our Rachel back into a lodging house again. If you will settle up with us, Mr. Hodgkinson, I am going to get a little business of my own. So I will close now, and will you write back as soon as possible, if you please, and oblige yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, 25 Zion Street, Lodging House, Radcliffe. Reading the letters, you can see that money has gone between them, and I fancy that Hodgkinson's just couldn't afford to send any more money. Mr. and Mrs. Hodgkinson, I was very mad about the way you have our child, but it is not yours. We have been to a solicitor, and if she is not here before Saturday, there will be further trouble. We are a father and mother. You don't think for 1 minute that we forgot her because you're mistaken. Well, no more at the present, hoping she's here by Saturday, mother and father. So I did go back. Well, I went back maybe 18 months, something like that. And by this time I'm growing up, you see. And there was a man on the scene there. I don't know who he would be. I've no idea. I've no idea at all. I only know that his face is so familiar after all these years to me. And I know he did things that he shouldn't have done to me. You know, and you read this child abuse and that. And it really upsets me. I don't like reading it because I can remember things that happened so long back. Now, whether they were making money out of that, I will never know. Whether my mum were having money paid to her, I don't know why it was.
The Hodgkinsons eventually rescued Vera from her harrowing existence in lodging houses and used a solicitor to draw up a formal transfer of parental rights to them. They then enjoyed a happy and secure family life together.
And they were playing out in this street, playing with the children, waiting to go in for lunch. And they were, I thought, they all have mums and dads, have these. And I'm Auntie Maggie and Uncle Edward. This is what they were calling Hodgkinsons. So I went in and I said, Auntie Maggie, can I call you Mum? Well, she didn't answer me. She went upstairs. I thought, oh, what have I done? I were always frightened of having to go back, you see. And of course, you know, Mr. Hodgkinson was sat there, so I said, Uncle Edward, what about you? Can I call your dad? Well, he never answered, and he went upstairs. And I went upstairs myself and went to bedroom, and they both sat on bed, holding one another's hands, crying. I said, what have I done? And they both said, oh, it was lovely. They didn't, I never asked me. They let me choose it. So they knew that how much I loved them, you see. I wanted to be their little girl, that's what I did. I didn't want to belong to anybody else, just them two.
Not all children can be adopted, but whether they are or not, they're quickly welded into the strong and subtle structure of the family, and through the family draw their dues, their stake in life as real people.
Adoption was legally recognized in 1926, after which there was greater protection for children. From the 50s onwards, the reduction in the number of children in institutions and the introduction of greater controls over parents has helped to safeguard children against some, but by no means all, of the most obvious abuses of the past.
And Jeremy Paxman will be reviewing Labour of Love in Did You See on Sunday.